Okay, so getting started on AI. So the first thing that we want to do with AI is we want to get our uh, character, our AI character, to move around the level or in the environment, and then from there we can start to build on new behavior and new interactivity. So that's what we're going to focus on to start, is getting our characters moving around the environment. And these little white spheres are the waypoints. That's where the character will travel. It controls where the AI will travel. This blue mesh that you see and this pink mesh are what's referred to as a nav mesh, and it's basically it's how the AI knows how to look at the space and knows how to get from this sphere over to this sphere or from here over to here. So that's what we're going to cover in this video is we're going to cover how to create this nav mesh, how to make these waypoints, and then how to set up our a state machine, a Playmaker FSM, to work with the character controller. Some of you are using the optive controller, and some of you are using the third person controller. Ethan here is being powered by the third person controller, and this character here, I think his name is Grunk, is being powered by the optive controller. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and you can see that these guys walk around the environment. Or in Ethan's case, he runs around the environment. So the behavior is not exactly identical, but that's okay. As long as you get your character walking or running from point to point, you're going to be in good shape. Grunt got caught on this corner here. It's probably the collider. It's alright though. Give him a little bit of a nudge. And sometimes you will have to do this. Like if you're in a situation where your waypoint's causing your AI to trip up, a lot of times instead of sitting there and trying to tweak the AI and get it to not, get caught on a piece of geometry, it's better to just move the waypoint so that he doesn't get caught on the geometry. Alright, so I am going to show you guys how to make this nav mesh, and then I'm gonna split the video and I'm gonna do one on how to make Grunk walk the mesh and make one on how Ethan had to do the mesh, how to walk the mesh, because it kind of splits at that point. All right, let's make sure I've got a prefab for all the relevant characters. Yes, I do. Okay, cool. Let's get a prefab of my camera as well. All right, new scene. All right, so starting with an empty scene, and your scene doesn't have to be empty. I'm gonna make my scene empty so that I'm working with simpler geometry than what you guys saw in there, because the nav mesh creation for that kind of geometry is a little more complex, and I don't want you guys worrying about how to make extremely complex nav meshes right off the bat. So I'm just going to make a pretty simple environment. And it doesn't need to be anything complex. It's got to have something going on in it, right? So it's not just, trying to walk around a flat plane. I mean, if you've looked at some of the other Playmaker videos online, there's a couple of like how to do AI in Playmaker that literally they have the character walking around on a flat plane, which is not the most interesting scenario to develop for an AI and is going to lead to a lot of problems later on down the line when you try to test the AI for robustness, because very rarely is anything that we're doing a flat plane. So creating just, like a little ramp there. Just a series of cubes. Not a series of tubes, that's the internet. Right. Okay, so that's just a really simple environment with some obstacles in it. I can move them around. All right, so under window, you have another category called navigator or navigation, or you should anyway. Yes, it's down here. It's navigation. So if you just click that over where you have your inspector, it will pop up over here. And we want to go to, I believe, bake, okay? So select all of these cubes too, and the plane. All of these so that they're all blue there. And if I go ahead and I hit bake, yes, save the scene. It's got to be blue. It won't work if they're gray in the outliner here. Navigation static, make sure that's checked, and bake. And as you can see, I get a nice blue mesh for everything here. Now, if we go over to the bake setting here, there's some interesting things to note. So there's these things called the agent radius, the agent height, the max slope, and all these things, right? So the agent is basically it's an abstract representation of the logic that controls the movement of your character. And when I start bringing the characters in, we will add the agent component to our characters. So the agent radius is basically, how much radius does the agent take up? And the radius of the agent determines whether things like the space between these two bricks is walkable. So if I increase the agent's radius to like 1.7, you see how much less room becomes walkable here? And he can no longer really, he can sort of walk up here. So if I go ahead and I make his radius, increase the step height, and hit bake again, this becomes completely unwalkable in here. And it's important to note that you can only have one agent radius per nav mesh. So that is probably going to impact what you can get away with. You can see like it's got all this like so like he can basically step over this. Like you see how the mesh kind of pops up off the ground here to accommodate that? That's because the step height is at 2.9. If I lower the step height, make it really low, suddenly he can't get over it anymore. And it's nice, you get a good little graphical representation of everything here. So I'm going to drag this agent radius back into something reasonable like 1.5. A height of 6 is a little extreme maybe. Step height a little bit lower. And then the max slope that he can walk up, right now it's set at 45, which is more than enough for this. So yeah, he can walk up this little slope right here. Looks like he didn't even get up there. Maybe if I increase the step height a little bit, increase the radius. All right, so now we've got a nav mesh, okay, and that's just the basics of making a nav mesh. They can get much more complex. You can add obstacles to the nav mesh. I don't want you to worry about doing anything fancy for your first nav mesh. I want you to worry about getting something simple like this. If you really like AI and you really get into AI, then by all means, read the documentation, watch the videos, and do a lot more with your nav mesh. I think it's fun. I think it's pretty amazing stuff. Alright, so that is how you make a nav mesh.